Ambassador Liu Xiaoming, Madam and Minister, colleagues, students, welcome to this evening's lecture. Your Excellency, it's my very great pleasure to welcome you to the University of Cambridge, and I hope that you've had an interesting day among the various departments that you've been able to visit. There is a strong bridge in this corner of East Anglia to China, and it is heavily used. The academic staff of our faculties and departments are supporting over 130 separate collaborations with Chinese universities, academies, and institutions. Those collaborations involve researchers and teachers from every academic discipline that we could identify in the university. And we have 12 established institutional agreements with leading Chinese universities and agencies. And these links really are testimonies to the fact that academic priorities here and academic priorities in China are shared. We all seek to meet the great challenges that the world hands down to us. I had the great privilege earlier this year of speaking during the day of the closing ceremonies at the Shanghai World Expo in October. It was an extraordinary and spectacular celebration of the global community and China's engagement with the world. Later this year, in April, I shall return to Shanghai and also travel to Beijing and Hong Kong, and the bridge, hopefully, between Cambridge and China is one which you will see increasingly and very pleasantly populated, not just in one direction, but in two directions. But perhaps the strongest part of this bridge that ties us and binds Cambridge and China together are actually our students. There are over 750 Chinese students in Cambridge, many supported by Cambridge scholarships. Now, Ambassador Liu knows the university life extremely well. He is a graduate of Dalian University of Foreign Languages and has a master's degree in international relations from Tufts University in the United States. And as a diplomat, what a series of postings he has had to Africa, to North America, and most recently as China's ambassador to North Korea before his arrival in the United Kingdom in 2010. For tonight, Ambassador Liu has an ambitious topic for his lecture. China is now widely recognized to be the second largest economy in the world, and as its financial power is growing, so its place in the world and its internal development are rising challenges, some predictable, some surprising, but all extremely exciting. So it is my great pleasure to invite you, Your Excellency, to address us on the topic of the road to success and a blueprint for the future. Ambassador.
Vice-Chancellor Sir Leszek, faculty members, students, it is my great pleasure and privilege to visit Cambridge at the invitation of the Vice-Chancellor and to speak to George Business School. This is my first visit to Cambridge as the Chinese ambassador to the UK. Yet Cambridge is no stranger to me. I heard a saying that if you want to meet prime ministers, go to Oxford. If you want to meet Nobel Prize laureates, go to Cambridge. I know Cambridge alumni won 88 Nobel Prizes, as many as the prizes won by the entire Britain as a country. I first got to know Cambridge from Chinese poet Xu Zhimo. Mr. Xu, I know is well known here in this Cambridge, who wrote his best known poem, Farewell to Cambridge. And later from Dr. Joseph Needham, who wrote and edited the epic series, Science and Civilization of China. My first visit to a place called Cambridge was 29 years ago when I was a student at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, which was then jointly administered by Tufts and Harvard, as Vice Chancellor just said a moment ago. As Fletcher and Harvard share the same library core number, I went to Harvard Cambridge Library quite often. But today, I finally come to the real Cambridge, the authentic Cambridge, both on the personal journey to fulfill a long-cherished dream of seeing Cambridge and experiencing its 800-year heritage, and also on an official visit to discuss education, cooperation, and to talk about China. Last week, one of the headline news was that China has officially overtaken Japan as the world's second largest economy. This has put China in limelight once again and stoked an ongoing discussions about China. Many questions were asked. What does China being the second largest economy tell us? How soon is China going to be number one? Will China be able to sustain such a rapid growth? What does China's development mean to the world? This list can go on and on, but these are the most asked questions. Let me share my thoughts about these questions. First question, what does it tell us that China rose in at number 2? I think it tells us the successful story of China's development. The secret of China's success is simple and open. That is, China has found a development model well suited to its national conditions. How should we go about developing a country with a 1.3 billion population and a history of 5,000 years? Neither textbooks nor history has given us the ready answers. As Deng Xiaoping termed it, we managed to cross the river by feeling for the stones. We explored our way forward in the pioneering spirit by combining the useful experiences of other countries with the specific conditions in China. China's success also lies in its commitment to reform and opening up. Opening up means embracing the global economy at every level and in every area. But it's much more than that. It also means freeing your mind, fostering a more open and diverse society. It means nurturing a culture of open and transparent government. Reform is about transforming the planned economy to a vibrant socialist market economy. It's also about comprehensive progress in political, social, and cultural spheres. Some people in the West believe China has carried out reform only in economic sector, not in political system. This is a misunderstanding of China's comprehensive reform. During the past 3 decades, political reform has come with economic reform every step of the way, and political progress has been achieved hand in hand with economic growth. We have seen a growing role of the National People's Congress and the multi-party political consultation under the leadership of the Communist Party. Democratic decision-making and legal system has been strengthened. The millennium-old pattern of a rule by man is giving way to the rule of law. We have also seen significant progress in human rights. The promotion and protection of human rights has been written into the Chinese Constitution. All citizens enjoy rights protected by law to equal participation and development. we have also strengthened international cooperation on human rights. It was not for lack of trying that Western-style democracy did not bring China the prosperity and strength it had wanted so badly in its modern history. Now that we have found our own road to success and Chinese-style democracy, why should we waver or give it up? Second question, how soon China is going to overtake the US? Before we answer this question, let us look some keywords. Aggregates versus per capita. China's economic aggregate stood at 5.8 trillion US dollars in 2010, ranking China second in the world. But its per capita GDP was merely 4,300 US dollars, lower than 100 other countries, only 1/9 of the UK and 1/10 of the United States. The other pair of keywords are coastal and inland, urban and rural. We in China have both rich cities in coastal region and underdeveloped poor regions in the west of the country. The urbanization rate is only 46%, and urban-rural income ratio is as high as 3.23 to 1. I served for 2 years as assistant governor in one of the poorest provinces in China, Gansu. Gansu suffers from tough natural conditions. Desertification threatens livelihood of local people, and economic development is a huge challenge for the local people. Many of the children in countryside do not have access to computers, not to say the internet. Many boys and girls have to drop off out of school because of their families cannot afford their continued education. Another pair of the keywords are made in China and created in China. For all its manufacturing strength, China is still at the lower end of a value chain. In many cases, only labor-intensive parts of production, such as processing and packaging, are done in China. R&D, design, key components, and marketing are done elsewhere. 90% of China's export commodities are OEM products. 20% of retail value of every mobile phone, and 30% that of computers, and 20 to 40% that of computer numerical control machine tools go to foreign patent owners. So there's still a long way to go from made in China to created in China. Last pair of keywords are energy intensive and energy efficient. Statistics show that China's energy intensity is 3 to 4 times that of international average and 8 times of Britain. China consumed 46% of world's iron and steel, 16% of energy, 52% of cement, and yet only produced 8% of world GDP. China still has a lot to do to raise the quality and efficiency of its economic growth. Although China now is number 2 economy in the world, we still lag far behind developed countries in per capita income and the quality of GDP. China is still a developing country, not because we are modest or hypocritical. Development remains and will remain a top priority for China for a long time to come. Third question, can China sustain its fast growth after 3 decades? The answer is positive. China is still in the course of rapid industrialization and urbanization. This is a phase when massive infrastructure investment is needed. 300 million people are expected to move from the countryside to the cities in the next 20 years. The Chinese people need to upgrade their consumption pattern, and Western regions need to catch up with their counterparts in the coastal regions. So driving force is never lacking for Chinese economy, and there's plenty of potential to be tapped. We have reason to be optimistic about the future of China's economy. The National People's Congress will review China's 12th five-year plan at its annual session next month. This is an important blueprint for China's development in the next 5 years. We'll carry out strategic economic restructuring to expand domestic demand and promote balanced growth, driven by consumption, investment, and exports. We will strengthen agriculture, increase competitiveness of manufacturing, and give priority to emerging industries and the service sector. The aim to seek balanced and coordinated development between urban and rural areas, between West and the East. We will promote scientific and technological progress and innovation. We will speed up efforts to turn China into an innovation-driven country. As Mr. Deng Xiaoping pointed out, there's no other productive force more important than science and technology. Our future development must rely on scientific and technological progress, a higher quality labor force, and innovative management. We will continue to improve lives of our people. Economic development is aimed at serving people's interests. We will improve social security, increase job creation, promote equal access to public services, and balance income distribution. This will ensure the benefits of development of China will be shared by all Chinese people. We will build an energy-efficient and environment-friendly society. We need to catch up with the developed countries in terms of per capita GDP, but not per capita energy consumption. This would not be sustainable for our planet. China cannot follow the traditional Western way of industrialization. We must raise energy efficiency, reduce emission intensity, develop circular economy, extensively apply low-carbon technologies, and actively address climate change. We must promote sustainable development, achieving appropriate balance between economic, social progress, and population, resources, and the environment. The fourth and the last question, what does China development mean to the world? A blessing or catastrophe? Or opportunities or threats? I think this question can be answered in 3 aspects. Is China a threat to world peace? China follows an independent policy of peace, we solemnly pledge to the world that hegemony or expansion is never an option for China. China stands for non-interference in others' internal affairs and negotiate solutions to international disputes. China believes that security should be based on mutual trust, mutual benefit, equality, and coordination. China is the largest contributor of peacekeepers among the UN Permanent Five, having sent 10,000 peacekeepers on 24 UN missions. It has sent escort ships to the waters of Somalia coast and worked with the navies of other countries to combat piracy and improve safety in international waters. It has actively worked to facilitate six-party talks to uphold peace and stability in Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia. China is in every way an upholder of peace and facilitator of stability. Is China a threat to world economy? China has been crucial support for global growth since the start of financial crisis. It drove global demand at a time when developed countries were in economic difficulties. This was reflected in the 31.9% increase of EU exports to China and the 42% increase of UK exports to China last year. China maintained a double-digit growth last year and contributed 20% of global economic growth. China will continue to pursue the strategy of win-win opening up over the next decade. Its market will open wider, its share in international trade will increase, and its imports will rise. This will no doubt create enormous opportunities for countries around the world. Is China a threat to international system? China has been participating in and contributing to the current international systems as a responsible major player. It has entered into extensive cooperation with its partners in developed and emerging economies on the reform of global economic and financial governance, and jointly advocate greater role of the G20. It has strengthened traditional friendship with other developing countries and helped them develop their economies and poverty reduction. The loans it has provided for other developing countries in the past 2 years have surpassed those of the World Bank. It supports and practices multilateralism and stands for greater democracy in international relations. This can be seen by its active participation in global and regional cooperation, along with the support it gives to tackling global challenges such as climate change, energy, resources, food security, and terrorism. China's development is a blessing, not catastrophe, to the world. It means more opportunities, no threats. It is not to be worried about, still less feared. Just as Franklin Roosevelt put it, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Faculty members and students, over the past 8 centuries, the University of Cambridge has stayed true to its motto. From here, light and secret drafts in its tireless pursuit of world's truth and knowledge. More than half a century ago, Dr. Joseph Needham uncovered the treasure of China's ancient science and civilization. Today, when you look at China, you will realize that it is embarking on a journey no country has ever made. This goes beyond the knowledge of human beings and offers enormous opportunities. I therefore encourage you to follow Cambridge's motto, to renew your efforts in tapping the rich resources China has to offer, and lead the UK and the world in studying and understanding today's China. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador has very kindly agreed to take some questions on the speech that he has just made. Really very informative indeed, and I just wondered to throw the floor open to you.
One thing you said struck me in your speech. The one country that possibly China could compare itself to is India, having to manage also 1 billion plus people. So I would be curious to know, in your opinion, what is the one key lesson that China can learn from India as it develops and grows? And what is the one key lesson that India should take away from China's growth and development?
I never gave a thought about the only key lessons that China can learn from India. But I do think that our two countries can learn from each other in many ways, both in terms of developing our economies and also in terms of how our two countries can work together for global recovery, how our two, both China and India are members of BRICS. Now we have to say BRICS. We used to say BRIC. So starting from this year, it's a BRICS. And also important players in G20. I think, it's very difficult for me to symbolize the key lessons we can learn from India. I would say our two civilizations have really a lot to offer to each other. Thank you. Maybe this is quite too diplomatic answer to you. But I do realize that we really have a lot to learn. In fact, myself, when I worked as assistant governor in Gansu province, I led a delegation to India, and we reached a lot of agreements of cooperation with our India counterparts. Thank you.
The last sentence of your speech is to understand China. And I do think this is the key to the Western people and of course to the British people where we are today. And I've been here for 5 years, but it's really rare for me to see any TV programs produced of China and to introduce our great, beautiful country. But when I was in China, I see a lot of programs introduced about the UK. That's the reason why I'm coming here. But I feel it's really important for us to let the Western world to know us. It's not only our economy is growing, but our people are more open-minded and really accept the world, not only like the other people think that we are coming to the world, but we are here welcoming the world to come to us. And I think maybe, Ambassador, you can suggest some CCTV to produce some great programs of our country and our people to broadcast here, and maybe this one of the ways to let the world know us. Thank you.
I appreciate your comment very much. I think what you said is quite true. I think in terms of trade of cultural items, UK is really suffering huge deficits. And I think it's not only up to the UK government, but also we have a responsibility to introduce China to the British people. So that's why we encourage to have more exchanges. cross-border exchanges, not only among scholars, students like you, but also like the performing arts. For instance, last year, British London Symphony Orchestra was in China. Same was National Ballet. And we also have, the top world-class pianists like Lang Lang and Li Yundi. And we encourage more artists visiting UK. And there's also a lot of exchanges between museums. I don't know if you know, not long ago there was a great hit in the V&A Museum about the imperial robes from China. And I had a brief stop before I came here at the FiveYear Museum. They also are planning to stage a museum about the objects of a Han Dynasty. And they're also planning to take their objects to China. About the movies, documentaries, that is also the area we are working on that. Next year will be a very important year for China and UK relations. We are planning, maybe I gave away some a plan. We are still under discussion with our British colleagues. It's a 40th anniversary of diplomatic ties between our two countries at the ambassador level. We are planning to have a series of cultural events, including to have two giant pandas set in their new homes in Edinburgh Zoo, and also exchanges of performing troops, including participating in the Edinburgh Music Festival. And also next year, China will be, guest of honor countries in London Book Fair. This is the largest book fair, next only after Frankfurt. There will be hundreds of Chinese publishers and printing press house will, display their books here in London. And we encourage to have more school exchange of students. So there will be a lot of things going on next year. And we're also discussing about making some movies. I was approached by a producer of James Bond series. They want to do a show in China. I want to make sure the movie is positive about China. Not just using China as a platform. And but there's some collaboration between our two police institutions, both in the areas of anti-drug trafficking, fighting against terrorism, illegal immigration. So there's a lot of positive collaborations between the police departments of the two countries. I think we can make a very successful James Bond movie, and so that will not only introduce to a British public about the collaboration between the Justice Department, the police department of our two countries fighting against the organized crime, but also will present the beautiful scene of China to the British public. Might serve to attract more tourists to China. And so there's a lot of areas we're working on. If CCTV has a plan about making a movie, you are the first one to know that. Okay, thank you.
Hello, Ambassador. I'm from History of Art Department. I really appreciate your previous answer to that question, because I study history of art, and I was told I was the first history of art student in my department. And when I arrived in my department, I feel that there's much of the talk about China. Like each seminar, China is almost unavoidable. Like people will talk about Shanghai World Expo in 2010, and people will talk about Beijing Olympic Games in 2008. So I think your strategy. So my question is, what's the new strategy of cultural exchange between China and Britain and what's the difference of it to the year before? Like I study cultural exchange between China and Britain in 18th century, and we know that Lord Macaulay was the first ambassador to China in 1790s too. And I was wondering that what's the difference of historically, what's the difference? Thank you.
We need more exchanges, as you said, on the contemporary China that both include economic and also political exchanges and cultural exchanges. I think you are right. I think that is the point I made with Sir Leszek when we first met. I found that Britain is a very strong, in many universities, very strong in ancient China studies. But when it's come to contemporary China, it's very difficult, if none, to find very prestigious institutions and world-class scholar on today's China to understand success, the secret of success of China. So we encourage to have a more efforts in contemporary China studies that include both political, economic, cultural, education, and arts is also very important. So we encourage to have more exchanges on contemporary arts of China with the British counterparts. So I even challenge some of the directors of museums, when they talk with me about their plan to getting more objects of a Han Dynasty, Qin Dynasty, seemed to me they even go even further and beyond the Qin. I said, why you should not plan to think to put up stage exhibition about the achievement, the success of China's reform and opening up in the past 30 years. I would say that will probably be eye-openers to many British public. That is something we can also work with them so that people can understand why China has achieved so rapid a growth in the past 30 years, and they probably will have a better understanding where China is going. I think that is the area where we should put more efforts in the future.
I am very curious about your opinion about inequality between the richer provinces and poorer areas in China that relate to your experience as assistant governor in Gansu. What is China's short-term or mid-term strategy dealing with this inequality? Because the reform made cities like Beijing and Shanghai so much richer, and it's vocalist cities now, but not just Gansu, but so many other areas they are so underdeveloped. How do you, as a government, cope with this problem? Thank you.
Many measures have been taken to address these issues, include to provide more financial support to the poor area. I think in the past 5 years, the government have invested, central government have invested more than 400 billion British pound, equivalent, should be, yes, 400 billion British pound in developing infrastructures. When I went to Gansu, there was no single kilometer of highway. I served there for 2 years. When I left, they already have 200 kilometers, expressway. And I think today I met with one of the students from Lanzhou, and I think he also noticed enormous changes taking place in his hometown. I haven't been back to Gansu for 6 years, and I just met with a delegation from Gansu last month, and they asked me to go back to see the changes. So, of course, it's not only government, central government investment. In most cases, when central government have investment, local government should have a match fund, So that's kind of incentives. So that will stimulate the infrastructure building. And also, now the emphasis have been put on supporting the poor people, the needed people, both in terms of Medicare, education, and also a lot of efforts have been made to improve their living conditions. For instance, the government have a fund which are used to support the most needed people. There's a basic, what we call it a per diem, a subsidy for the poor family, and that has been increased, which each passing year, I would say. So in order to, to cut the gap between the poor and the rich, and also a new policy, new tax reform regulation also introduced. We'd like to, in the old days, everybody had equal opportunity, not only opportunity, but also equal distributions. But some people do not have incentives. So Deng Xiaoping proposed that some people get rich first. So I think it's probably the time for those people who get rich first to pay back to the society, to help the poor people who need more help. So I think there's some adjustment of a tax ratio, so the rich people will pay more tax, and then government will use this income to provide more support to the poor people. And also now the central government also are doing reform in the Medicare and pension program. And most of these programs are aimed at improving living standard of the poor people. I think there will be more efforts will be made in this respect. Thank you.
My name is Willy Ke. I'm doing economics here, so my question might be sort of related to economics. As China's foreign exchange reserve is growing larger and larger, reaching a significantly huge amount, we need to spend this amount of money. And one sensible way or reasonable way is to invest abroad. And on the other hand, as our enterprises, China's enterprises, were growing through these 30 years and have grown to a mature period, they also need and can invest abroad. So, Mr. Ambassador, do you think UK is a good destination or ideal destination for these two kinds of investments? And how do you analyze the investment environment here? And how do our embassy help our enterprises in this issue? Thank you.
China does have a lot of foreign reserve, that's true. But you also have to look at, from all aspects. Sometimes too much reserve might not be a good thing for a country. In fact, that is really, in your balance sheet, it's really your debt. Your company making money, but you cannot take them back, and you have to buy a lot of U.S. bonds. So some of we have to be very cautious. The figure change from time to time. I think the latest figure is about 800 billion US dollars bonds now in the hands of the Chinese government, out of 2,000 billion US dollars. So if we want to use, we sell the American bonds and invest in UK, it might create a panic in New York Stock Exchange. So we have to be very cautious. We have to be very cautious. And I think Obama will pick up phone and talk to President Hu Jintao. What are you going to do with? But having said that, we do have a lot of actual money, which I think we should put them into best use. So that's why we encourage our companies. Well, we call it go global. So we have this strategy of go global. In fact, we see more and more Chinese companies coming or going, spread out the world. Take for last year, for example, we've seen a 70% increase of China's investment overseas. And I think that it totaling about 59 billion US dollars. And according to some forecast, by 2035 or maybe 2025, China will invest, so that is only in 15 years' time. For 2025, 1 year only, China will invest 350 billion US dollars. And that will make China the #1 investor in the world. And so where China will invest all this money? I think, of course, the business people would invest in a profitable market. And I think UK is really, as you said, ideal place for them to invest. In fact, we've been seeing this tendency, the trend of Chinese companies investing in UK. Last year, China already became the second largest investor in London in terms of the project. And China is now the 6th largest investor in the entire UK. And I think this ranking of China will change with each passing year. So I'm very optimistic about China's investment here. But having said that, as you said, what about the environment? So that's why I think my speech is relevant. After today's visit, I'm going to visit some companies. And next week, I'm going to Wales to talk to the business community. And I think on the British side, they also need to improve their investment environment. British officials kept telling us that British UK's market is the most open, most ideal, and no comparison with other countries. And I agree that it's more open than many other countries. But we also see there are some barriers, both in terms of visa barriers. We receive a lot of grievances from Chinese business community about it's very slow, for them to get visas. And sometimes their visas are rejected. So, they book their tickets. But, at the last minute, they were told their visas were turned down. So they have to pay, the penalty, for the cancellation of the tickets. So there's some complaint. And what's more, I think the soft environment is also important. So that's why I think it's important for the two countries to increase mutual understanding. I think there's still some, I can't say this is a wide spread, shared understanding of China, but there's still some misunderstanding about China. I don't know if you read this is not a kind of commercial of newspaper, but certain newspaper carried news about Huawei. It's the largest China's tele company. They tried to, this has not been official announced yet. I haven't talked to their senior executive yet, but I know there's ongoing discussion between Huawei and Greater London Authority. They want to donate certain of their equipment. So the headline news of this newspaper said, China is giving a gift to, as a former Olympic host, to the coming host of Olympic country. It's about 50 million British pound. It's big, equipment, big money. But on the one hand, they said good things about these donations. On the other, they said, oh, Huawei, has a military background, this company, and its CEO is a retired soldier of Chinese People's Army. And then it go on say that Britain has to be very cautious about receiving this gift. And because it has been proved that a certain proportion of a cyber attack was from China. And so they are concerned about whether London should rely on the equipment provided by China, a company which have a military background. You have this kind of, I would label this kind of mindset as a Cold War mentality. If you do not have a basic trust of your partners, how can you do business with? Huawei is one of a very successful company. They invest hundreds of millions US dollars, British pound, in this country and employed more than several thousand British people. And I think we also need to engage each other to increase mutual understanding, to provide a more ideal, soft, favorable environment for business for the business community of the two countries to work for the common good, for the common development. Thank you.
Well, Ambassador Liu, it's been a real pleasure to have you here with us in Cambridge today.